white child. It's not a colored rendition of white children. It's very important that you know that, because if you start off with that premise, no matter how good your intentions, you're going to do a disservice to your children. If you're going to do the right things about your children, you must know them, which means that you must study their history and their psychology. You cannot study the history of Europeans and the psychology of the European child and apply that psychology directly to black children. One of the major problems in education today is that we have a school system, and your children have inherited a school system. Is that we have a school system, and your children have inherited a school system that was designed to teach the white child
Good afternoon, friends, family, loved ones, enemies, contributors, distractors. This is Kevin Lewis on the Blueprint, and this week's show is called Child Support, the Unsupported Child. And I want to talk about what happens in the war that seems to be going on and waged in our communities. When we talk about child support, as far as men and women are concerned, and the perception of child support. Now, that opening commentary, that's from Dr. Amos Wilson, brother that has books out that I think that should interest us. A lot of information about child psychology and things like that. And well, you can look him up on YouTube and look at his speeches and whatnot if you don't have time to read the books. But he's talking about the psychology of us raising our child, the developmental issues that we face, or that our children face, being raised in a world that's not accustomed to our development, and it's actually anti-black and brown development, basically in this country. So I want to talk about that. And when we're talking about child support, and I appreciate Andrea showing up, Aisha, appreciate you showing up. She said she thought it was Monday. I appreciate the day showing up also. Now, when we're talking about child support, now the definition of child support, when you're talking in this country and the Western world, things like that, it's a court-ordered payment, typically made by non-custodial or made for non-custodial divorced parent to support their children, their minors, child or children. That's the definition of child support. But you don't actually have to be married. You could be separated. You necessarily don't have to ever have been married. But if it's that person's child, then it's an order placed on them to pay monetary support for their child. Many of us already know what child support is. Now, that's the guidelines that we go under in this country when we're talking about child support. And if you ask a majority of Americans what people do they think pay the most child support or have the most recipients of child support. And I think most of us, if I could speak for most people, and not even us, I think most black people would think that black people are the ones that sought child support and is awarded child support at a higher rate than anyone else. we tend to have the most single parent households, so it would stand to reason that we are the ones that have the most child support. Surprisingly enough, it's not that case at all. There are 20 million children in this country that's eligible, under 18-year-olds, that's eligible to be on child support, or not to be on, but to be recipients of child support. Their mother to be recipient of child support. 20 million children. That's like 27% of the kids in America fall up under that category where they should be receiving child support. I think it's like 78 million children in America that they estimate, and 20 million of them, which is just below 30% or so, would fall under a category of being a child support recipient, or their parent being a child support recipient. Now, according to child support specialists demographics and statistics of 2022, white people are the highest group that have child support. They are like at 66% compared to black people who are at 18%. Hispanics are at 10%. Now, those are the people that have been awarded child support. Almost 66% of child support recipients are white, which something that many of us would not have believed, because that's not the perception that is put out. And that's an important thing when we want to discuss child support and the perception of child support in this country, basically. And whites are 23% more to get awarded a child support case than blacks are. Meaning that if you have a black mother, if you have the same amount of people, 100 people, 50 white, 50 black, that are going seeking child support, white women are more than 23%, have a more than 23% chance of getting child support than a black mother. But I would think, why is that? That's the first thing I would question. But also, whites have the highest compliance rate when it comes to child support payments, and the blacks have the lowest, which is also something that we need to take into account when we're discussing child support. In the aspects of America, like Dr. Wilson was saying, we don't fall up under the same guidelines, basically, as our white counterparts when we're talking about the support of our children. We have to have a different type of mindset when we're thinking about the support of our children. I'd like to thank Coretta for showing up, and Sharon, Hotep sister, I appreciate you showing up. And I'm going to read a comment right off the bat from Aisha. She said, my sister is supposed to receive child support from her ex for their 2 kids. He rarely pays it and never in full. He now has custody of one of their children, and she has to pay him child support. And that's, wow, that's a sad circumstance, I guess. I don't know them in their predicament, because sometimes you can be, as a father, in a better position to raise your kids. But the way that we are in this country, and the customs of this country, the mother is basically the custodial parent. And in 85% of the child support cases, the mothers are the ones that are the what they would call child support specialists. or recipients 85% of the time. So when we're talking about child support, we're mainly thinking about a woman receiving payments. Now, when I said the compliance, this is something that draws into that conversation about people not making their payments or being late on their payments or not making payments at all. Black people at the bottom of the list. I think it's like 66% of the time we are in compliance, as opposed to 70% of the time white people are in compliance. The Latinos and the Asians are somewhere in between those two, between 60 and 65%. But they all are higher than black. Now, if you take into account our economic situation in this country, our unemployment rates in this country being higher than any other group, because things like unemployment is not the same across the board when it comes to this country, when it deals with the demographics. You know, they'll say the unemployment rate is at a certain place, but you have to realize that it's going to be higher for blacks in America because we are not employing ourselves. This is part of our problems in this country. There's a lot of combatant conversation that goes on between men and women, or combatant attitudes that goes on when we're talking about child support. And I think the problem is most of us take child support in a thought process of with the definition that I gave as a monetary value. And I think if we take that out of the brainwashing of that, and this is how you support a child, you should monetarily support a child, but there's a lot more that goes into supporting a child than just receiving a check or giving a check. And I had Michael asking, where was those statistics coming from? Now, one of the places that those statistics was coming from, like I said, the child support specialist demographics and statistics. They put that out in 2022. That's one of the places that you can find those statistics. Another place that they had it was the U.S. Census Survey results. Anytime you look up a census, the census, they don't just do population count. They do demographic counts on different situations and circumstances. And they have a chart that goes up. It says the characteristics of family served by the child support. And what they call the child support, the federal child support program, is the 4D program. And they have different census that they gave at different times for their statistics. So this is another place that I was, and this statistic, particular one I'm talking about now, was by Elaine Sorensen and Arthur Pashi and Melody Morales. There's a summary of a report that they gave in the census about the characteristics of those that are served with child support. And some of the bulletin points that they put up, like I said, the 85% of the recipients are women, and they said the average age is 37. 52% of them have one child eligible. And so feel free to look up any of that information. Now I'll cross-referenced a couple of sites, but what they do, they draw from the same source basically. So a lot of their numbers are the same. And I appreciate that comment. And I think that's very important. Anytime anyone is giving you information or statistics, you should be wondering where they got those statistics from. But like I said earlier, it's coming from the child support specialist demographics and statistics of 2022. Now, a lot of, like I said, the attitude that many of us have in our communities are between men and women. It's more combatant. You know, I had someone tell me one time, I think they thought that it would something that I would be approving upon when they had kids with someone, 2 kids, and there's a young lady, and she said she won't put her baby daddy on child support, and she said, I'm not going to put the man in my business. And my question was, well, that's fine if you're not going to ask for child support, but is he supporting his children? And then she goes on to say, well, he don't give me this, that, or the other. He doesn't do this, or the other, like monetarily, or he rarely comes to see him or spends times with him or things like that. And then she goes on to say that she gets like TANF or support. And my thing was, so what you're doing, you're saying you don't want to put the man in your business, but you got the man in your business because you're getting money from someone. And once you start getting money from the government, they're in your business, because then they have control over your household and what can happen in your household. And once someone is giving you something or someone is feeding you, then they have the power to take things away from you. And that's control. That's power. But that's what I rebutted. That was my rebuttal to her, was you're making everybody else pay for your kids. You're talking about not having. I say, to me, if you're not going to have some demand, that quote unquote demand in your business or your situation, then don't ask for anything from them. If you don't want to put him on child support, then don't ask for child support from the system, because now you're being one of the statistics of black people mainly that's leaning on the government for handouts, because you're protecting someone that's not doing their obligation to their kids. And that was my response to that. Now, I understand that some people may have that mindset to saying, well, I'm not going to put this guy on child support because the system of how the system has attacked us. I put it like that. Now, when I'm reading these statistics about the compliance of child support, a lot of times, and the other statistics about white women being awarded at a 23% more higher rate than black women, and this is something that goes back to 1986. And why are these statistics looking like that? For one, anything in this country is going to be slanted towards white people. Honestly, I mean, that's the bottom line of it. And a lot of things in this country is going to be slanted against black people. A lot more black men will be in prison or in jail over being non-compliant with their child support payments. And that does neither the woman or the child any good. A thing that brought this conversation up today was a conversation I was having with somebody, and just information they passed along. The Tyrese case, well, earlier this week or last week, the judge ruled that he had to owe $10,000, a little over $10,000 a month in child support for his child in Georgia. And I mean, some people say, man, that's ridiculous. And the thing about the child support is based on a chart of your finances. So sometimes when we look at celebrities, and these celebrities are paying, $10,000 or $20,000, or the woman may ask for this amount of money. You can ask for whatever you want. The lawyers, the attorneys can ask for what they want. But basically it comes down to your tax return. And what it is, in most charts, if you look at, each state has its own child support rate. And they don't too much differ, but like 20% for one child. Whatever you make in 1 month, it's going to be 20% of that will be a child support payment for one child. And it's 25% for 2 children, which means you're going to give up a quarter of your paycheck if you have 2 kids by the same woman or with the same woman that you're paying child support for. Now, I'm guessing if you have a child by 2 different women in the same state, they're going to garnish 25% of your check and divide that amongst the children. That's how I would think it would be. I'm not really worried about how much people would have to pay. I know it is a cap in Texas. I think the most that you could pay is about $8,000 something dollars. They put a cap on how much you have to pay someone, which I don't really understand that. Because if you're a millionaire, a billionaire, whatever, you should be paying the same that everyone else pays or is forced to pay. That's how I would think, but I don't know why it's not like that. But in Texas, I know they put a cap. In some other states, they put a cap on how much you should pay your child. Now, if you're someone like Tyrese, now this is his second child support. This is his second child that he has to pay support on with two different women. The first one, I believe he has a 15 or young teenage daughter in California that he's paying about $10,000 a month on. And now he just had this child support payment ordered on him for another $10,000. But they were arguing that he made off of his movies, that he made like $2 million for the Fast and Furious thing in 1 year or whatever. So maybe that's going to force him to keep having to work, or he's going to have to go back and get that adjusted. But a lot of people will react, and a lot of us, we have to realize we're not celebrities, and a lot of men will say, well, see, that's ridiculous. What is she going to do with this amount of money? What would that child be able to do if it had both parents there with them, and one of the parents was making $2 million something dollars a year? Private school, they would be afforded luxuries of having somebody that's rich. I don't know how much the mother makes, but that will be afforded to that child, that lifestyle. A lot of times when you have a married couple and they get divorced and you're in California or whatever, and you have to pay alimony, why do you have to pay that grown person alimony other than the lifestyle that they were used to living, or that they would be living if you were still with them? And that's what alimony basically is, to help take care of a grown person, whether it's a woman paying alimony to a man or vice versa. So why would we think that a child or a mother taking care of her child isn't worth that amount of money? Now, it sounds like I'm just in favor of women when I'm talking about child support. But in a lot of cases, many of us have seen where there are women that seek out pregnancies and things like that with stars. And when song Gold Digger comes on, people have that in mind when or these women that chase ball players and things like that have a lot of money, and their only goal is to get pregnant so that they could get this lump sum of money, and it comes a paycheck. But this is what we have been relegated to in this country, the mindset of child support. And when I was looking at the Tyrese case, the judge had an interesting commentary for both of the parents. And the judge said, this is not a punishment for you, when she was talking to Tyrese. She said, but that money, she said, put that money where it belongs. And she was basically saying with the child. And she said, I want you both to love your kid, and I want you both to tell your kid to love the other parent, because that's how we get successful human beings. Nobody won here and nobody lost. The kid lost because she doesn't have her parents together. Minimize the effects of that loss. Minimize it in every way, shape, and form that you can. Now, this is a judge basically talking to two people as if they're kids. And this is what basically has to happen, because this whole child support system is basically like you're dealing with kids. Either one kid or, well, I'll say kids, because you're talking to either one of the adults is acting like a kid that has a kid, or both adults are acting like kids that have kids. Because anytime you have to tell a parent that they need to support their child and someone has to legally make them do it, then that's someone that's not taking responsibilities. Monetary support is the least you can do for a child. If someone has to act like, demand, like people like to say, the government has to act like a parent to make somebody take responsibilities over their own children, we are in a bad state as a people. Now, like Dr. Amos was saying, we are not the same as white people. We are not to be categorized as in the same condition as white people. Even though some of the laws may blanket both parties, but the justice is slanted in this country. That's a fact. The conditions that we have been placed upon, that have been placed upon us, that we are living under and have been living under for over a century, over 2 centuries or whatnot, 3 centuries, are not the same. We have traveled a different road. We are in a different place. We are in the same country. We are in a different place. And this is what it was important that I wanted to play that commentary from Dr. Amos, because we have to think differently when we're talking about supporting our children. The conditions that we are in as a people makes things a lot more desperate for us when it comes to our children. We have to do everything we can because others are not doing everything that they should do for our kids. We're in a school system that's not made for us. We are in a school system that is not made for us to be progressive in. We're part of a justice system that is not made for us. We have to start looking at things in a different manner for ourselves. The main objective of a parent should be the total support. And I'm not meaning monetary support. It should be the support for their children. We should be doing everything possible to support our children. The problem is the culture and the lifestyle of American society, the cultural simulation that we have let ourselves slip into, which is a downgrade of a people that we used to be. When cultural simulation works against you, that means that the culture, the people that you are in a society with, you assimilate to their culture. Either it's going to make you better or it's going to make you worse. We have seen situations where we talk about the Moors being in Europe. The cultural assimilation that the Europeans had with the Moors is a totally different thing than the cultural assimilation that we have here in America to the outcast Europeans. The Moors had a positive impact on those people that they were ruling in Italy and France and things like that. They taught them things. They improved their status. They improved their culture. They improved their education, their hygiene. Here in America, the cultural assimilation that we have acquiesced to has had a negative effect on us, and it is meant to have a negative effect on us, and we are letting it happen. When we look around at how many fathers that we have in our community, the white fathers that are being put on child support, that's not an issue for them. That's not an issue for their kids. The kids have other things that will help them make it in this country, in this society. They have a privilege. We can't look at a child support with a white kid and a child support of a black child being the same. We shouldn't even have to have these type. We can't afford to have these type of situations. The bickering that goes on, the war that is being waged between the men and the women in our communities over what child support is. First of all, support goes way more than monetary contributions. You need it, but it goes way beyond that. Many of us that are forced to pay child support think because I'm giving this check to somebody that absolves me of my responsibility and my duties of a parent. You still are a parent. That child needs you as a parent, as a mother or a father. They need you in their life. That's the least you can do. The most you can do is to reconcile, to do everything you can do to support your child. That means that any issues that you have with this other person, that you laid down and you copulated with and you had a child with, you should be doing everything you can to make that circumstance work. But that is not what we do. Even if it means going to therapy. If you're doing it for the child, you should, at what length would you not go for your own children? Unfortunately, that question is answered by the results of what we see in our communities. Many of us will put our pride and our ego before our children. You're with a person that you're not getting along with, where it is too easy for us to go our own separate ways. That is our pride and our ego. When whatever happens in that relationship, if it was something that you cannot deal with, and I'm not saying that you should deal with some disrespectful things that people may do in a relationship, but those disrespectful things that one person is doing or has done, is they put those things above their child. The best thing for that child is to have a nuclear family. The best nuclear family for that child to be in is their biological parents. Seeing the people that created them work on a day-to-day basis for them to do the best they can for them in this world. And I understand sometimes those things don't work out. But what I'm getting at is that we let things go, or we let little things that should not override the fact that we have a child together. We don't work hard enough to keep that relationship between the mother and the father together. This is how I see things, because I believe, like I said, if white people have more child support than we do, that's cultural assimilation for us. Because back 50 years ago, back 70 years ago, the 1950s or whatever, being an unwed parent was a negative thing. Not just for the mother, but for the person that impregnated the woman out of wedlock. These are things that we have gone so far away from. That was part of our culture back then. That was looked upon negatively on both cases. If you're a man and you got that woman pregnant and you didn't take your responsibilities as a man and as a father to take care of that woman, then you were frowned upon also. But that's not the case. Now it is so cavalier to have a child with someone and just keep moving. And it has nothing to do with how much money we make, the poverty line, even though they do give statistics by saying this happens more for people that's under a certain poverty rate and things like that. But if you look at our celebrities, if I look at Evander Holyfield, and he has 11 children with 6 different baby mothers, that's a problem. I don't care how much money you make. That is not good for the child. And people will look at it and say, well, look at him, or, long as he has the money to pay for his child support. But that's not helping that child. If you have enough money to take care of your child support payments, that's not taking care of that child. That's the way they have to look at things. That is not the way we can afford to look at things. If I look at basketball player Sean Kemp, he had 7 kids with 6 different women while he was playing basketball. Every time he went to another town or another city to play on the road game, they say he had side chicks there. Or if he wasn't married, he just had women there. And it was just like, whatever. If I look at Calvin Murphy, now this is somebody that's way before I named Evander Holyfield, Sean Kemp. It's plenty. Scottie Pippen is on the list. If you look at people that had multiple kids by multiple baby mamas in the NBA, the list is out there. But one of the most egregious cases was Calvin Murphy, who was like a Hall of Fame guard from the 70s and 80s, early 80s and things like that. He had 14 kids with 9 different baby mamas. When we see these things manifest in our celebrities, that manifest in our communities, we have to see those things as a problem. And when we're trying to attack the problems that we see in everyday circumstances in our communities, and we want to complain about things that's happening and what happened to our kids and why our kids are being more disrespectful, our morals and our ethics have become loose. When we're dealing with each other, black man and black woman, when we're dealing with each other, the fabric of our culture is shredded. We are putting comforts and desires in front of the consequences of us getting together and having children, because we are having those children like we could just leave them as men, and most of the time as men, that we're doing this and we could just walk away from the situation when we're not getting along with the parent, with the mom. You can't have that situation. You can't have that mindset. If your mindset is to develop a strong child and a strong offspring, you have to give everything you have to support your child, to protect your children from what Dr. Francis Quest Welsing was calling racism and white supremacy. The attack that's going to be imposed upon them. You have to be there as a parent to be ready to protect them. You can't put your ego and your pride ahead of that, because we will continue to lose that war if we do that. It becomes so cavalier for us to have physical attractions, lust and desires without commitment to that person that you're lusting and desiring after, let alone for the results of that lust and desire, which is a pregnancy. That's why we have high pregnancy rates, high abortion rate, high single parent pregnancy rates, and high abortion rates, because it's so easy for us to just get rid of the kids or the consequences that come from our actions, to just abort them, because we don't want those responsibilities. If you had that mindset before you laid down with that person, or before you engaged in an action that could create a life, you wouldn't be so readily influenced to get rid of life that was a product of your actions. Just like when someone goes in and they want to rob a bank, or they want to do something like that, the consequences, they want to sell drugs, the consequences of their actions is sometimes you may go to prison. You have to live with the consequences of your actions. Or you have to improve your actions. And that's mainly what I'm getting at. We have to see and amongst ourselves, we have to put it, impose those type of ethics and morals upon each other, to look negatively on people that continue to have kids and have abortions, or get pregnant and have abortions, or continue to have kids with different spouses at a time, and just keep moving on like it's nothing, and be able to separate from that person like it's nothing. And just because you're having issues with that person, at one time you wasn't having issues with that person, because one time you were laying down with that person. And when things get rough, you have to be able to reconcile, because now you have a child to support. That's the mindset that we have to have. And I'm gonna read some new comments. I know I've been rambling on. Um, I appreciate Avelina showing up. Day said, I was just about to say they're protecting. Right when I start reading, the screen just jumps to something else. I'm sorry about that. Said they are protecting the other parent, yet they are not protecting their children because they're getting government assistance. But if they don't put the other parent on child support, and they lose their benefits. And I appreciate those comments, and I understand that, and that's part of the game that the system is playing with us, because there are two culprits when we're talking about child support and using the child and child support as a weapon. Because a lot of us know women that use the child as a weapon, or men that use the child as a weapon, women that use child support as a weapon, or as a get out of the ghetto free card. You know, they're having a child for the sake of getting the money from a celebrity or a rich person that they're sleeping with. They're purposely trying to get pregnant without a commitment from that person, knowing that they're just going to get a monetary payment. And they basically feel like they've made it because they're going to get that money for that child from being with this person that makes millions of dollars. And that's using that child as a weapon. Other times when we think of people using a child as a weapon, we think of them as not as when they're mad at their significant when they're mad at their ex-wife or ex-husband or ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, their baby mama, baby daddy, however you want to put it, and they try to keep that child away from that person, or you know, they use it. We think of it as that way, using that child as a weapon, but also the weapon is using that child to get money as a sole purpose of having that child. That's a weapon too. That's using child support as a weapon, that child as a weapon. And we have to think in how we can correct those things that's happening like this. I'm going to read another comment. Teresa said, I have my own feelings about child support. And it relates to the discriminatory hearing practices in our country. I feel monetary support is important, but not the most important consideration in the decision. I think she said, I think time is priceless, and if I don't know why it just jumped to another screen. I had to scroll all the way back down and find you. It says spend time with the children. It outweighs the money they could provide. The moment that the non-custodial parent is unemployed, it allows for increased incarceration of our people. That feeds into the plan of our representation in the prison system. I appreciate those comments, and that's exactly one of the points I was getting at with the child support as a weapon, because the next thing I was going to talk about is the government using child support as a weapon against us as people, as our people. And this goes into when I was talking about the statistics of the non-compliance, that we are the lowest in compliance when it comes to child support, but we are the ones that are not able to employ ourselves, and we are at the lower economics of this country as a people. So when the government, to me, it's all a well-devised plan, part of a factory of many conveyor lines. And this is something that also I look at with the way the perception, when I was saying the perception of child support, we think that black men will probably be the highest of those that are paying child support or forced to pay child support, and that not being the case. But we are suffering the highest consequences of not paying child support. And the war that is being waged between the man and the woman, the black man and the woman, seems more prevalent in the black community when we're talking about child support. I don't think it's as prevalent in the white community or the Hispanic community. Maybe in the Hispanic community, I don't really know. But I know that we have a lot of debates and arguments, and I see a lot of people on social media, the posts where men are attacking women, saying that women, I give you this money and it's not for you to use it for this and that. And women going back and forth with men, because actually what that is our depleted culture that have us thinking in certain ways, a depleted culture and mindset to have us wanting to use a child as a weapon, or use our child support check as a weapon, our payments as a weapon. And what you're actually doing as a man when you do that, you're hurting your child. You're using it as a weapon against your child. As a woman, and the thing is, anytime you're in a fight with somebody, and I remember growing up, and my parents, there's no rules to fighting. You know, if it's a brick right there, you pick up a brick and bust somebody in the head, whatever. When you're in a fight, and this is how we act as in our community with our men and women, we are so readily we are so ready to use our kids, to use that kid as a weapon to hurt someone that we once was with, or to use the money as a weapon, you know, or to use our ego and pride to say, well, I'm not doing this for that kid because I'm doing that for that kid. And a lot of times people will say, and they know that it's like, well, I give you money, and it's something else that's needed that's not monetary that you need for that kid. And if you go to that other person, they're going to say, well, you know, I give you money, as if that's the least that they should be able to do in their mind. And that's not the case. We have to get out of that mindset. I appreciate those comments. So the government, I think, uses child support as a weapon against us. I'm going to read another comment from the day. She said, I admire a lot of young men now that are putting themselves on child support and being there for their kids. As a woman, it is sad on how some females use their kids as pawns to control the relationship of the child and the other parent. Both should be in the best interest and work together as a parent to bring up the child, and because it does have an effect on the kids in the long run. I appreciate those comments. And a lot of times what we do, because we are in the situations that we are in, we don't realize that how detrimental it is, because many of us say, well, I made it, or I know this person that made it and their dad didn't do this and that, but you don't know how far ahead that person may be. That person is at a certain status of what we think is success, despite not having that man in their life or whatever. But that person could, where that person is now, that we think is success, that person could have been Maya Angelou. That person could have been the next Malcolm X, the next black leader, Martin Luther King. You know, that person could have been so much more. We don't know where that person could have been if they would have had that person, that dad in their lives. You know, we look at it as, oh, well, that person, look at where they at, or look at where I'm at, and my dad wasn't around. But you could have been so much more if you would have had that productive support system of both your nuclear parents, of having a nuclear household with both your biological parents in that household. That could have done wonders for you, but you don't know. I'll read a comment from Mike. He said, child support is about money, not about time with kids. I appreciate the comment. Mike said, I agree with this statement. When he was talking about the day. I appreciate the comments. Coretta said, unfortunately, the government don't care about the kids. They just care about getting their kickback. And I appreciate that. And that's very true. That's what I'm saying. There's culprits in this. And it goes beyond us men and women fighting over child support issues. That's very superficial. If we delve deep into it, We have a lot of things to look at on the role that we're allowing the government to play in our relationship and in our families. The government controls media. The government controls perception. You know, the perception is out there that black men are a certain way. And they used to say, well, they'll leave you pregnant and barefoot and blah, 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 blah. And that was the perception. But it was more black men taking care of their kids than it was white men taking care of their kids. When I'm saying taking care of their kids, I mean as single parents. Studies have showed that it's more black men single parent households than it is any other demographics as far as men are concerned. But the perception won't allow people to believe that. You know, that's to many people, that's a shocking revelation because of the perception that the media puts out, but the government accepts and tries to put out for the world to see. So we have to constantly fight these things, and we have to see that no one has our best interests in mind but us. No one has the best interests of our children in mind but us, and no one should have the best interests in mind but us. And Correct also said because the government take their part of that money before they send that check. And unfortunately, I guess that's a true thing. Deborah, I appreciate you showing up. She said they like playing adult games but not the adult responsibilities. And that's why I'm saying as kids, you're dealing with kids, and maybe one adult or two kids. Because the whole thing about being an adult is being responsible for your actions, taking responsibilities. And if you as a man do not want to take the responsibilities of the child that you produce, then you are not a man, you are a boy. You are a male, an adult male, and you are not a man. Same thing with a lot of these women. They don't want to take responsibility a lot of times for the actions, and neither parent. A lot of times when things are going awry, they don't want to take responsibilities to say that we got to make this right. If I'm a man and I am straying away in my marriage, my relationship, and I have kids involved, then I'm straying on my kids. And as society, we have to look at it like that. And as a woman, if you are straying outside of your relationships or berating your man and being disrespectful, and that kind of stuff is putting a strain on your relationship. That's putting a strain on your kids' upbringing. We have to stop thinking selfishly and think of ourselves as a survival unit, like Dr. Francis Cress Welsing called the black man, black woman, and black child. We have no time to be cavalier with our actions and not take responsibility of our actions. Once that child is there, as a parent, as a responsible parent, everything should be about that child and raising that child, not your pleasures and your vices or, fantasies or desires or egos, pride, attitudes, whatever. Everything should be secondary to the raising of that child and keeping that person with you. But that is not the case, because that's the culture assimilation that we have fallen to. Where we have fallen to. Lede said, having your parents there for their kids and supporting them through life's challenges are more important than money. But still, you're still ensuring your children have a roof over their head, clothes on their back, and etc. And see, the whole thing is you are ensuring that if you have your children with you and their other their other parent, because your child shouldn't go without while you're going with. And if your child is with you, you're not going to say, well, I don't have a roof over my head. And then, you're not going to do that. You're going to keep a roof over your head and their head if y'all are together. You're going to keep bills paid if y'all are together. You're going to make sacrifices if y'all are together. but I appreciate the comment. And Mike said, but some situations don't call for reconciliation, so you need more to move on for the better of the children. And I understand that, and I'm not going to sit here and say that nobody should get separated, but I'm saying it is so easy for us to get separated. Like whatever those irreconcilable differences are, make those really, substantial differences. And to me, the thing is, if you're going to do the things that can create a child, part of the responsibilities are, before you do those things, you should be knowing who you're with. If you took the time to know who you were making a child with, even though that wasn't your intention, but getting in a car, drunk driving, they, press you to the full extent of the law if you have an accident, even though you didn't mean to kill somebody. Even though you didn't mean to wreck and damage up all this property, that wasn't your intent, you still held accountable for your actions because they figure like you should not have done those things. They got in the car drinking. Same thing, you laying down with somebody and you don't really know them. But we are in this the place that we are, the lifestyle in America, that's okay to be doing that. It's okay when we talk about abortions and all these things like that, pro-life, pro-choice. Pro-choice begins with the choices that you're making and who you're making those choices with when you laying down with that person. But those are not things that we want to talk about because that's just part of the lifestyle that this country is in. That is part of, and the thing is, it used to be a point that, okay, this is something that I did. This is something that I got to do because I did this. The mistakes that we make, we have to, our mistakes, our conditions, we have to work through them or work with them. That's how I feel. You have to work through them or work with them. And if that other person is not willing to do that, then yeah, you have to be able to do what's best, not for you, but what's best for the kids. And I talk to people a lot about, a lot of times we are grandparents now and we have kids that's in relationship and they having these issues. And the thing is, if at one point these two people or you two people were in a position where y'all were laying down together, that everything you were saying all the right things to get everything in that position. And my thing is, now you got to say the right things, even if it takes a shot on your pride or your ego. Do whatever it takes. And then, yeah, I understand that sometimes that person is not who you thought they were, or they become somebody else doing some other things. But that's what I'm saying. That other person is putting something else ahead of their children. If this person is straying in y'all relationship, then they're putting those desires ahead of their children. And I'm not just talking about from one person's standpoint. I'm talking about from both people's standpoint. And I do understand that. And if that's something you can't deal with or in a relationship, and you have to leave the relationship. But even at that, leaving that relationship, you could walk away from that relationship but still be amicable as parents. And that's what the main thing I'm getting at. I don't care what people can deal with or how well you get along with somebody. My point is, hey, this happened. I don't think we can make this work, but we still can work together as parents, because too many times somebody stray in a relationship or whatever it is that somebody don't want to deal with. Irreconcilable differences. But then the atmosphere after that is toxic, and it's toxic for the kids. Where you can move on and say, hey, we're not going to be able to be together. Come to that understanding. And if that person still want to be with you, they have to understand whatever their actions were, it's not going to work. But it's too much of a FU type attitude when things are not working, and that continues to be dealing with the kids. This is when you start using the weapons, or you start having an attitude. Well, I'm just going to give her money, or I'm going to keep my kid away from him because he's a bastard, or whatever. But if that person wants to have that relationship with their child, that has nothing, you have to put your ego, your pride, your hurt feelings to the side and say, this is what's better for my kid, to have this man still be able to be in this kid's life. It no longer has anything to do with you. I still got to be able to deal with that woman and not call her out of her name and do all these things like that, fighting with her, if I still want to have a relationship with my kids, because it's not about you and it's not about her anymore. A relationship that's in the past. I read a African proverb, I believe it said, the past only hurts you because of your memory. And if you're worried about the past and you're worried about the future, you're living in the past on memory, you're living in the future on imagination. So the thing is, anything that happened in the past, that hurt, that pain, that anger, whatever you have, that doesn't have nothing to do with your kids right now, with that person and their kids. You know, so that's what my thing is. I think that we have to go to much further limits that break us, and in our relationships, for one. But then if that can't work out, then we still have to, you know, do everything we can to be part of that kid's life. And you can't say, well, I'm trying to be part of that kid's life, but then you're disrespecting their parent. That's counterintuitive of what you're trying to do, or what you should be trying to do. When I look at the Tyrese thing that I spoke out on a couple of years back, when he went on social media crying and sobbing, talking about his, you know, blah, blah, blah. But my thing is, I'm not into that social media crying and emotional stuff, because to me, what part of me that's breaking down so bad as a man that I'm crying and sobbing and can't deal with life, that I'm going to pick up the phone and hit live, go live on, and be able to hold the phone and position it in front of my face where everybody could see all my tears and things like that. If I'm not distraught, what makes me want to go pick up a phone or get in front of a camera and push record to say what I have to say? I don't understand that. Now, you putting your life out there for everybody, but my thing was, from the start, you can't be calling this person a bitch and a hoe and da 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 da, and talk about how ragged they are, and then be turning around talking about, I want to see my kid. That person is going to be vindictive. If that person is doing the same thing, talking bad about the daddy and all this stuff like that, how is that doing anything for that child? That's what I'm saying, by putting that child first, not just between the relationship part, but between the part of them having a relationship with their kid. And this is something I see way too much of in our community when it comes to us men and women dealing with each other in relationships that didn't work out, that produced the kid. We still have to have that relationship that's going to be conducive to our children growing up to be strong byproducts and better byproducts of us. Sharon said, we have gotten away from family values. Women think it's cool to just lay with anyone, makes them independent or equal to men. I appreciate that, and that's very true. That's a whole conversation right there. She said, this society is succeeding in breaking up our family. We need to take back our power, which is our family. And I appreciate those comments, and that's basically in a nutshell what I wanted to say, and just spending too much time, I guess, trying to say it. Lede said, in some cases, some fathers have shown to be better custodial parents and have been awarded full custody of their children. At the end of the day, it isn't in the best interest of the child, or it is in the best interest of the child or the children. I appreciate that. Now, trust me, I know that. Mike said, yep, I was one of those fathers, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being the man that you are. And a lot of men probably don't step up, but like I said, it's much more black men that do step up, that have. And I mean, you go down to people that you know. I had somebody tell me a long time ago that that's very rare, and he didn't say it was very rare for a man to be custodial parent and to be raising their kids, but he said for a black man, and he wasn't a black man. And I asked him, well, how many black men do you know? Because I was kind of taken aback. I'm like, well, I know a black men that I don't know any other men, I probably know one or two that's not black, but that's not indicative of, I don't think of it as being indicative of their race, because I don't know enough about them. I don't have enough white friends to have a good pooling of what happens in their community. And what they believe happens in our community is off of perception. That was the perception part of it. Because like I said, statistics have shown, and many of our women will sit up there and argue about that. Nah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Well, I'm saying, well, you know what? I don't know how many men you know, but I don't think you know probably as many as these statistics put out. And you're probably looking at the people in your community or around your family or your, whatnot. And that's understandable. Aisha said, a few men I know put themselves on child support to cover their backs or file a joint custody. And I appreciate those comments. And those are things that we have to discuss. But I mean, unfortunately, many of us are finding ourselves in that situation because it's not, many of us think it's us against the woman. And it's actually the government against our people. That's the bottom line. We have to think in those type of cases and circumstances. And that's why I say as a woman and as a man, if you understand that, then you won't be so in a rush to go to what that woman said, put the man in your and I'm saying the man, the government, in your business. And it's like realization that this is what the plan is. But at the same time, we as men have got to be responsible for our kids and not say, well, don't put the man in our business and don't do this. But then you have to do everything you can to support your child and be a part of your child's life. Because on each side of the argument, we do have those circumstances where women are out there trying to just get pregnant, thinking that's going to save their relationship or put them in a relationship with this man or get them a paycheck from this celebrity or whatever, or they doing things to hurt the man with the child, that want to be a part of that child's life. And on the other case, on the men's side, it's the same thing. Women could point at circumstances that men do not. They have children and they have nothing to do with their children. And a lot of them probably should go to jail or whatever. If you're that type of person that you don't want to do anything for your kids, then you're the ones that need to go to jail. And there's some that's not like that. There's some that want to have everything to do with their kids. But we can't just throw them in a barrel and mix everything up when we're talking about these cases. Lede said, once the government get back what's owed to them, they can care less if they are... I don't know what you said, whatever owed to you. She said, yes, they do have to look out for themselves because one, they don't want, arrears hanging on their shoulder. Two, they're being responsible to take care of their child. And three, yes, they should want or deserve to have joint custody because both parents shouldn't have more rights over the other in caring for the children. I appreciate that. Folks like to go to social media for social pity party, and I appreciate that comment. But that's basically everything that I was wanting to talk about. We have a factory that's dysfunctional, a factory that's very functional at creating dysfunctional parts. Let me put it like that. The factory in this country for us, for black people, is about creating dysfunctional parts. And some of the dysfunction that we see in our communities, whether the parts realize that they're dysfunctional or not, they're still dysfunctional, even though they feel like they're better than other parts. The factory is creating parts that's worse than other parts, and those parts that's not as bad off as the worst parts think that they're doing well, and that's part of the dysfunction that they are creating in this country when it comes to us. The dysfunction proves itself when we are not happy at where we're at as a people. When we're steady complaining about the things that we're complaining about. We're complaining about our kids. We're complaining about our education. We're complaining about our jobs. We're complaining about the lack of jobs. We're complaining about everything that's happening around us and with us. That's dysfunctional. When we can't recognize a village, the villages that we think we see or that we thought we saw were not actually functioning villages. They were just better than what we have now. A real functioning village is a village that protects the people that's within it. A village that's able to flush out the waste and keep everything wholesome and healthy. That's a real functioning village. And if we were ever part of a functioning village, we wouldn't be part of where we're at today as a people. And then we blame the children for not being in a better place when we're the ones that raised the children, and our parents are the ones that raised us, but we're actually all being raised in dysfunction, and we don't understand what functional is because we haven't been part of a functional civilization since we left the motherland. Little pockets here and there of Black Wall Streets and Slocums and Rosewoods and things like that where we weren't really functional as far as protecting our own and protecting our kids because we were still relying on someone else to feed us. We have to be independent. We have to recognize that we are part of a circus. We don't know how it is to be on our own. We're like bears or tigers or lions that's been brought up in captivity, domesticated, tamed to act a certain way and jump through hoops, and we are gauging our success on the accolades that we receive in the circus, the peanuts that they're giving us, the applause that they're giving us for whatever we did well. We're fighting each other because I jumped through more circles than you, and they applaud for me more than they applaud for you, and all of it is a dysfunction. This is not how we're meant to bring up our kids. Thinking about in the aspect of child support, how much someone should get. That's their system. That's what Dr. Amos is talking about. We have to psychologically break out of thinking in their circumstances, and that's going to take a long road to travel to get to where we want to be, and it doesn't even matter where we want to be because we don't know where we want to go. Many of us don't even know the issues that we are fighting against. And that's what we have to bring or make apparent, that we are fighting an issue that's much bigger than saying child support in their definition. We got to engage in full child support. I have to have, support of, or try to support the children in my community the best that I can. Every adult should be wanting to support their children and also the children in their community. That's a village. And once we see what a real village is and understand what a real village is, it'll be easier for us to construct that village and know what it takes to have that village and know what waste we have to get out of our villages to keep it clean. I appreciate everyone showing up this week. Man, I didn't know I was going so far over, but hopefully I have a better show for y'all next week. Kevin Lewis on the Blueprint. Peace.